Good morning, everybody. Another episode of Southern Shadows and Dust. It's morning in Canoe, Alabama, and we're about to just do a little quick runabout Canoe to kind of get out of the house and kind of get our thoughts on some other things. So let's see what we can find. What do you think?
Let's do it. How's all y'all's youngins? They all doing good? They all grown?
Yeah. Tell her what they're up to, Sandra. While I record the YouTube to tell their bio.
We've got one married, living in Palmerton. And Autumn. Autumn, who did she marry? She married Josh Day. From Palmerton.
Now, Mr. McKissick, what were you telling me about these fishermen that come out here?
Well, there were some guys that were fishing, that were talking about fishing a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured, you know, if I needed some advertisement on being able to get rid of some of my fishing stuff, those guys would have been perfect to have let the word out, because they look like they could spread it pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, you know, with me, it's like the fish gets bigger every time I tell the story. So, and sometimes it changes type too. It could be
Exactly right.
catfish
Depends on
one.
the situation.
That's right.
What gets their attention?
That's right. That's right. Cast iron pans, utensils, clothing, and best of all, catching up with great friends and neighbors at this yard sale on historic Hume Avenue in beautiful downtown Canoe, Alabama. Provided a good way to spend a Saturday morning. Hume Avenue was one of the early subdivisions laid out in Canoe back in the early 1900s. Several parcels and alleyways and everything else was included in the setup back in those days. And families moved to Canoe, and a lot of their descendants still live there. So let's kind of talk to some folks. So here we are at the yard sale on Hume Avenue in Canoe, Alabama, on a brisk Sunday morning. And,
Did they go hug him? He's probably like, I'm too big for that.
so what did you buy, young lady?
I got some lemonade and just some various things.
Yeah, the lemonade's top shelf. That's really good.
So 150 here and then 2 over there. Where do they go? So that's 350, 150 B, and 2. Thank you. Would you like a lemonade?
I'm gonna pass. I just got coughing started.
2 for who else?
2 for Debbie.
Okay. Okay.
You might want to. Hey Debbie, you might want to go to the
Thank
store
you. Have a great
because
day.
I haven't been able to.
So now y'all run the upholstery shop here in Canoe now?
Yes, sir.
Gosh, okay. Well, I'm Kevin McKinley. You got money in your hands, so that's more important. So nice to meet you. I know we talked about a share, so nice to meet y'all this morning. Yeah, y'all having a good morning here in Canoe. So y'all live here in Canoe now, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I live right here.
Okay. Well, you want to show me the back of your shirt? I saw an advertisement on it, so I'll be glad to give you a plug there. Family Tree Upholstery, 251-294-0031. Call for a free estimate. So what all y'all do? Furniture and anything, auto or?
Everything. We do just your typical home furniture. We do boats, golf cart seats, motorcycle, four-wheelers, and vehicles as long as they're older than, like, say, 2002, 2004.
Right.
As long as they don't have any airbags.
Fantastic. So,
Particularly do.
well, good. I'm glad y'all are out here. Y'all have lived here for a little while, right? Yeah.
This was actually my great grandmother's house.
Oh, really? Yeah. How old is this house, you think?
115 years old.
115 years old.
A little older, yeah, 100.
Wow.
117.
So,
In 1950.
what's your name?
My name's Brenda Bant.
I knew that, but I had to, ask for the YouTube channel. So they moved here in what year was?
1950.
Wow, 1950. So
And
what?
this was the home of Nellie and Lewis Evers.
Okay.
This was my great-grandparents.
Wow. How long did they live here? All
My
their.
grandmother passed away back in 2001.
And y'all restored this house, didn't you? It looks. Yeah. I watched the renovation go on it, and I was really impressed by that. That was able to bring it back. It's great when these old homes can come back and everything.
Absolutely.
So.
It's a special place for our family.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something you never regret, is keeping that in the family. So, well, great. I'm glad y'all talked to us, and glad to be here. And I'll kind of get a shot of the house if that's okay with y'all. So, okay.
We still need to do some more work on it.
Oh, hey, you never get finished. So, those projects, there's always something else to do. So we'll take a little trip up the highway and. To our left is the Hall Cemetery. On another episode, we'll do a deeper review of those. Take a little stop here at Freewheel Cemetery and look at an unusual headstone. Hear the train a-coming. Yeah, continuing our trip this morning out in Canoe, we're at the Canoe Freewill Cemetery with probably one of the most unique graves in Escambia County. You wouldn't know it by looking at it, but gentleman here, Mr. Alexander Bolivar Cromartie, was what we would call a galvanized Yankee. He was a Southern soldier, and he was born March 5th, 1831. His family resided in Monroe and Connecticut County. The family lived for a time at Denard's Bluff in Monroe County. It was here that Alexander enlisted in the 24th Alabama Infantry Regiment. He was in Company I as a corporal. He enlisted in Mobile. He was later made sergeant and was captured at Franklin, Tennessee in December of 1864 and sent to Camp Douglas. Now, the Franklin-Nashville campaign was one of the bloodiest, most destructive campaigns of the war between the states. General John Bell Hood, in an effort to draw Sherman off of his march through Georgia, invaded Union-occupied Tennessee and attempted to push. His plan was to invade the north from Tennessee. He lost a good portion of his army at Franklin, and then pretty much ground the rest of it at Nashville in the fighting there. But this individual here was captured, sent to Camp Douglas. Camp Douglas by late 1864 was swelling with Confederate POWs. They had very little food, poor medical care, which is really somewhat odd considering the amount of resources the North had at that time, in that they were clearly winning the war. They had agricultural surplus and medical supplies, but these gentlemen were not adequately cared for, and they died in large numbers. One thing the Union would do, they would recruit from the Confederate POWs there and try to enlist them in the Union Army. Now, they would not send them to fight against their countrymen in the South, but they would send them out west to fight against the Indians and in various capacities there. Well, Alexander Cromartie agreed to do that, especially in that he would not have to fight against fellow Southerners. And so he, on March 30th, 1865, he enlisted in the U.S. Army and was mustered into the 6th U.S. Infantry Company I as a private. He was sent to Omaha, Nebraska, Fort Kearny, I believe, and he was discharged on March 3rd, 1868. He returned to the South, returned to Alabama, where he served as a postmaster in Nixonville in Connecticut County, and he moved to Canoe, Alabama around 1908. He was married first to Obedience Cunningham and later to Sarah Higdon. He fathered 2 children by obedience and 4 by Sarah. They were Mary Elizabeth Etheridge, who married George Etheridge, and Eliza Mixon, who would later marry John Mixon, who would have a store in Canoe, and Emmett Mixon would have been his grandson to that. And you can see next to that headstone is more Mixon children, more Mixon descendants. Emmett L. Mixon Sr. was born in 1887 and died in 1966. And then Jenny Lee Mixon, born December 15th, 1898, died April 13th, 1960. And next to that is Emmett L. Mixon Jr., born November 5th, 1924, died June 6, 1944, who has a VA headstone. He was a private in 16th Infantry, 1st Infantry Division, Big Red 1, and he fought in World War II. He died June 6, 1944, and yes, he died during the D-Day invasion. A descendant told me that it was essentially battling over a machine gun position, and Emmett died with no descendants, no children of his own. The older people in Canoe say that at the time of his death, when word reached Canoe, people from all over gathered at the family's home and crowded Hume Avenue, where he had lived and where he grew up. There are other veterans who died at D-Day in this cemetery, and we'll cover them at a later time. I just thought it was very interesting to discuss galvanized Yankees this morning. I would also point out that there was also galvanized Confederates who would Union soldiers who had been captured, who had been joined the Confederate forces and fought with the Confederates. So it happened on both sides, and it's just an interesting place, and it was an interesting time in the nation's history, and there's so much around us that still reflects that. So I thought it was interesting to discuss it this morning.